Great to
Right.
have Phillies World Series champion Greg Dobbs back to join us as the Phillies get ready to go back to the playoffs. Greg, how you doing, man?
Doing great. I'm not as good as everybody in Philly right now, and you guys. This is exciting.
Boy, you know what? Every time we say World Series champion Greg Dobbs, you just start beaming. Does like the glow ever go away?
No, no, it doesn't. And nor should it. Listen, as we all know, right? The drought that we've experienced, it's been long, it's been pronounced, but that makes it so much more special, right? I mean, we had 1980, then I was fortunate enough to be part of 2008. Um, the the excitement is like, listen, it's almost like a rebirth of sorts, right? It never fades away. It never diminishes. It never gets tarnished, because once you've been there, and if you've been there, and if you've been lucky enough to be there multiple times, you understand how difficult it is to get there, and all the work that it takes to just to get to the dance, right? Just to be invited to the party. So no, it never wears off, and nor should it. And if it ever does, I'd invite both of you to slap me briskly across the face and wake me up, because that would be my fault.
Forget the drought. We'll talk about the Phillies in a minute. You were actually when you started in the major leagues, you started with the Mariners. The Mariners haven't made the playoffs since before you made your major league debut. What is it like for the city of Seattle to have gone this long, and what must it be like there for them?
I can't. That's even more difficult to describe and put into words. I signed in 2001 out of the University of Oklahoma, and that was the year they had 116 wins in the regular season. I mean, it was just bonkers. Um, and then they didn't live up to expectations in the postseason. That is an incredible story. What that organization has done, the moves that they've made, front office, ownership, staff on the field. That's an incredible story. I have to say, very, very happy for my fellow Mariners, and that entire organization. Wish them nothing but the best, but my heart lies in Philly, so I can't root for them too much.
So, with your heart here in Philly, Jeff and I talked a lot about the emotion that you saw from the players on the field and in the locker room after the game. Talk about what it's like for those players who worked so hard to finally get their chance in the playoffs. JT Realmuto, Gene Segura had gone more than 2,000 games combined without playing in the playoffs.
Great question. It's a combination of things. It's the excitement, it's the fulfillment. But that wears off, and you don't want it to wear off too quickly, because you want to enjoy every moment, right? But as elated and as excited as you are, especially for the first time guys, it's something that they'll never forget. But it's also something that you got to kind of quickly turn the page, because it's a shortened series. It's 3 games in St. Louis. Their home record 53-28. I mean, they are strong at home. So as much as, yeah, the emotions, the celebrating, the enjoyment of it, absolutely take it all in, be in the moment. But that next day, you got to start getting your mind right. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we did, not only in 2007, but more importantly in 2008 was, and 9 and 10. But 2008 particularly, we did a really, really good job of, listen, we had got there in 2007. Yeah, we got steamrolled by Colorado, but we'd spent all our bullets trying to get there in that late September run, which was magical. That was sort of like our freshman initiation, right? Everybody, they talk about the freshman 15. We put on the freshman 15 in 2007. And then 2008, we leaned out and we're like, okay, we belong here. But that only came with that experience in 2007, and learning that we had to quickly turn the page, right? We got to refocus. Yeah, it's great. It's an accomplishment, but so what? We're going to be judged upon how we play versus this opponent, which is St. Louis. So I'm sure they're doing that. I'm sure Rob Thompson's staff has got the boys' minds right, and all those that have played in the postseason on the club. But I'm excited for a guy like JT Realmuto, especially because watching him come up through the Marlins organization, he is an absolute grinder. He's an incredible talent, and he's just a great guy. And you root for those good guys, right? And he's been an incredible catcher. He's a rock in that clubhouse, on the field, handling that staff. I couldn't be more excited for JT.
Yeah, but as you said, 2007 helped you deal with 2008. This team doesn't have a bunch of guys that have been through this grind, as you talk about. And on the other hand, you have the Cardinals, who have Albert Pujols and Arenado and Goldschmidt and all of the and Molina. How do the Phillies get over that hump? Those guys who have all of that experience.
I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be tough. And that's the X factor. The X factor is, unless there's two things that could happen, right? One is, yes, you have all the experience in the world. You've got the talent. You've got your sea legs under you, which the Cardinals have. They do. They can go back into that Rolodex and those memories of games they played in postseason. They can rely on those times in postseason that they played well and did well. And that's something that admittedly the Phillies don't have. Now, how do you counter that? You counter that by your starters, Wheeler, Nola. Hopefully it's just Wheeler and Nola. But if we go to third game, Suarez, right? Those guys pitching well, going deep. It's all about momentum right now as well. So I think the way the Phillies can best counter this, having arguably a lack of postseason experience on the roster versus the Cardinals, is come out strong, come out hot, get that momentum on your side, especially playing in a visiting stadium for 3 days, 3 nights. It's going to be wild. It's going to be raucous. It's going to be intense. But if they can just come out blazing and get momentum on their side, that's the way you can counter that.
You talk about 3 days and 3 nights. I'm curious. They had a 2:07 start today, so the early afternoon they won't have to really deal with the shadows. They have the late game tomorrow night and Sunday if they have it. What's it like to prepare for the games at the different times? Is 4 o'clock the hardest time with the shadows? What's that like for you as a fielder?
It's so hard. It's so goofy. I vividly remember we were playing the Dodgers, and it was a funky, like 4:07, 4:17 start. Sun is everywhere, shadows are everywhere, and then on top of it, you had, which the Dodgers organization did an amazing job in this. They handed out white rally towels. Okay, so I'm at third, Moyer's starting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna have bullet after bullet hit to me at third. And we all know I wasn't a defensive wizard. Okay, I was no Abraham Nunez or Pedro Feliz. Fine, granted, I accept that. But it was tough. A sea of white towels behind you, playing third base in the big leagues, in the postseason, and nothing but huge right-handers coming up and just smack. And then the shadows, right? So it's difficult, but you have to do as much as you possibly can, put that out of your mind, deal with the shadows the best you can. And listen, both teams have to deal with it, right? So net, maybe it's a neutralizer, probably easier to deal with shadows like that when you're in your home park, your home surroundings, your hitter's eye, that gauging depth when it's a funky start time like that is challenging. It helps when you're in your own stadium. I would maybe give a slight advantage to St. Louis then in that regard. But nonetheless, it's going to be tough for both. It's not fun.
All right, we know you have to go, but before you go, I don't know if you saw the other night with Stephen Vaught in his final game with the A's. They had his kids announce him come up to the plate, and then the next at bat he hits a home run before retiring. What's the best memory you have, the most touching memory you have from your days playing?
Oh boy. Well, that was a tearjerker. That was incredible. I'd have to say, watching, there's so many. Having my family there, my wife, our daughter on the field, both in Philly and in LA where I grew up. Very, very emotional. I don't know why this sticks out to me, but Burrell, his dog Elvis, right? His bulldog. Elvis was like our unofficial mascot, right? There was a fanatic and there was Elvis, but it was really Elvis. I mean, I'll never forget. We have a photo of it in one of our albums, on the field after we'd clinched in Philly, to move on, and there's Pat and he's holding Elvis like underneath his front arms, his haunches, and Elvis was a big bulldog. It wasn't like a small little one. He's a big, massive bulldog, and the look on Pat's face is just, it's just magical, right? And here he is holding up his dog and sharing it because he loved that dog so much, and we love that dog as a team so much. I mean, he was in all of our clubhouses. I mean, he was everywhere, right? He was basically a team. We should have put a jersey on him. But I don't know why that sticks out to me. I was thinking of things when you guys were asking me like, hey, what stood out and what were some moments? And I can never get that picture out of my head. And Pat obviously had what he had meant to the city and the organization. He relished that moment and all of our postseason moments so much. And I know it meant so much to him. And Elvis has since passed. But that was a very emotional moment for Pat, for us, and for our families. And it was but that's just one example of so many.
Well, there's some guys playing baseball right now that have the chance to write their legacy here in the city this weekend. We thank you for all that you did for the city to bring us a title. And thanks for giving us some time to talk about it all. Have a great one, man.
I appreciate it. Go Phils.